Hello there, everybody. Dennis Prager here with Fireside Chat 356. It's my chance to share with you some thoughts on what is on my mind and take your questions. I love doing this. We have been consistent for 356 weeks except one, which really rankles me, as you probably know by now. Okay, so a few opening thoughts. I think they'll be relatively brief so I could take more of your questions. But I never know, to be perfectly honest, because it truly is spontaneous. As you can probably tell, I am not reading from a teleprompter. Is that Mr. Tubbs in the background? Is he looking for a spot?
He's trying to
Is
dig.
he checking the grass for where, yes,
Yeah.
for where he might lie down? Well, a guest that I have had on Fireside Chat, and I have very few guests on the Fireside Chats. I average 2 a year, and I'm not even sure we did 2 this year.
Not yet.
Right. So it's very rare that I have a guest. One of them was Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I don't agree with him on everything that he says. Well, I mean, which is almost silly to say because there are very few people you agree with on everything, but it doesn't matter. The point is there are areas of disagreement, and I have immense respect for him, which is why I invited him for a Fireside Chat. I've had him on my radio show a number of times. I've spoken at a few of his events as well. So we have a warm relationship. And he has now announced that he will be endorsing, that he is endorsing Donald Trump for the presidency. So just a few words about him, and then the theme about what has happened that I also want to address, and that is his siblings' reaction to his endorsing Donald Trump for president. I think the greatest characteristic that people can embrace is courage. It's certainly the rarest. There are far more kind people, nice people, generous people, loyal people than there are courageous people. There are many nice people who are not courageous. It's a very rare trait, and the human race cannot really continue if too few people exhibit courage. Look, just think of how little courage was exhibited during COVID in a community that you would expect. Is he looking for a new spot? This is genuinely funny. He found his spot. It was a great search. See, if you search, you shall find. So he has courage. He has this I am certain of. And by the way, I did not take him particularly seriously. I didn't even pay much attention to him much of his career. I only knew that he was sounding alarms with regard to the staggering number of vaccines given to children, and that those alarms, he felt, obviously, were worthy of people taking seriously. I didn't take them seriously. I never attacked him or dismissed him. I never thought he was a buffoon. I was hands off. I just had no position and moved on with my life. Then COVID came, and the staggering amount of dishonesty from the heads of medicine in the United States, CDC, NIH, FDA, it was across the board, just a genuine dishonesty, a misleading of the public, the nonsense about masks, the nonsense about distances, the lies about people who died with COVID as having died of COVID. There's a very big difference. So that literally you could have been hit by a truck, gotten killed by the truck, but if you had COVID, you might have been listed by a hospital as having died of COVID in order to collect a great sum of money from the government for every COVID death in your hospital. And then, of course, the vaccine itself, which turns out not to be a vaccine. And my belief at this point, never would have predicted I would have such a belief, that a fair number of people have actually been hurt by the vaccine. Some even died of it. And I don't have evidence that it particularly helped just about anybody. It might have. I doubt it. So that made me take Robert F. Kennedy Jr. very seriously with regard to vaccines. And then the more I have learned, the more I have come to respect his dissent. You know, I've given this example a few times. I don't know if I have on the Fireside Chat, but I know that I have on my radio show and perhaps elsewhere. One of the most prestigious medical clinics in America is the Mayo Clinic, based in Rochester, Minnesota, and now has branches elsewhere. And I remember, for whatever reason, I was curious to see what was being said about the question, are cigars as dangerous as cigarettes? And I know for a fact, I know it as I know that I am seated in a chair. What I'm about to say is not a belief. It is a fact. Cigars are not nearly as dangerous as cigarettes. And the reason is extremely simple. Very few people who smoke a cigar inhale. Everyone who smokes a cigarette inhales. And it's the bringing into your lungs the smoke that is the primary danger. Whereas you don't have that. The purpose of smoking is to taste tobacco in your mouth. The purpose of smoking cigars. The purpose of smoking cigarettes is to bring nicotine into your lungs. They both use fire and they both have tobacco, but they have nothing else in common. So I looked up this question, and sure enough, it took me to the Mayo Clinic website, and I saw cigar smoking is as dangerous as cigarette smoking. So one of the premier medical clinics in America lies. I mean, it's an out-and-out lie. That's it. And now the American Medical Association has announced that the sex of children should not be listed on their birth certificates. The American Medical Association. The children's hospitals that support and even advocate horrible things done to children who claim that they are the other sex or other gender in their parlance or manner of speech. So all of this has led me to take Robert F. Kennedy Jr. more and more seriously with regard to the vaccine schedule for children. And then with the armed forces kicking out the members of the armed forces who would not take the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, I spoke the other day on my radio show about how it is virtually zero, the number of people in Britain under the age of 14, I believe it is, who died of COVID. It's either 1 or 2 in the entire United Kingdom. That's incredible. And yet we have the medical profession insisting that parents give their babies the COVID vaccine. It can't help and it can hurt. So in other words, the medical profession is corrupt. That doesn't mean every doctor is corrupt. I go to doctors. Doctors have saved my life. I'm not naive about that. I'm not a fool. Nothing ever means everyone. To say that the medical profession is corrupt is not to say that every doctor is corrupt. Okay, I feel like I have to say it. It's very sad that I have to say it, but nevertheless, I am. So all of this has led me to greater respect for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for him and for what he says. And when I have followed him more and more, I have realized this man says what is true, and let the chips fall where they may. His robust defense of Israel, which any clearly morally thinking person should offer, like Douglas Murray is another example who does. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his mastery of the Middle East. I was the Middle East Institute. I studied Hebrew and Arabic. I have been to these countries. I have studied this all of my life. I was dazzled by his knowledge of the Middle East when he was challenged by anti-Israel interviewers. And he's very happy to go on with interviewers who don't agree with him because he actually knows his material and he knows how to convey it. So I have great respect for him. And then he came out and he endorsed Donald Trump. I hope that if Donald Trump wins, he is given a position in the Trump administration. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is one of 11 children of Robert F. Kennedy, the Attorney General of the United States, the brother of John F. Kennedy, and his wife Ethel. That is Robert Kennedy, the senior one. And so he has had 10 siblings. 2 of them have died, one in a skiing accident, one of an overdose. And the rest, I looked into this, all came out against him. They've all publicly come out and said he's a disgrace to the family. It doesn't speak well for them. I'll be very personal. While my wife and children share my values totally, I thank God for that. And I have a wonderful extended family, but none of them are, or almost none of them are as conservative as I am. Many are liberal. Only one is a leftist, but many are liberal, and they almost all vote. They all vote, to the best of my knowledge, except again for one that I know of, a Democrat. It would never occur to them to make a public statement, and I am very public, obviously. I am much more a face of conservatism than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is, who remains essentially a liberal. He's just not a leftist. He's anti-left, which is what every liberal should be. It would never dawn on my family to come out with a public statement condemning me, saying I was a disgrace to the Prager name and the Prager family. He can claim, and I don't blame him, oh, well, I love them, but, we just differ. That I understand, loving your relatives with whom you differ. I do. But I don't forgive the relatives for coming out publicly and saying he's a disgrace to the Kennedy name. First of all, it's very hard to disgrace the Kennedy name. It's somewhat of a disgraced name if you actually read about the family. There's a book I just read about, I don't remember the title, the Kennedy women. And it's not about women who are Kennedys, but the way women have been treated by Kennedys. And it was a liberal woman, a woman on the left who actually wrote the book. It is not a particularly special group of people, the Kennedys, but that doesn't matter. What this does is prove to me how unspecial they are, that they would go out and say he is a disgrace. He doesn't agree with them, so he's a disgrace to the Kennedy name. I feel bad for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to have siblings of such low moral quality. That's my reaction. He can claim he loves them all he wants, and I totally understand that he wants to take the high road, so to speak. But I don't have to take the high road with regard to his siblings. They stink. Period. One is as ugly as the other in terms of humanity. Now, they may think that endorsing Donald Trump is the same as endorsing Adolf Hitler. And by the way, they probably do, because they all have college educations, and some went to graduate school, and they generally live in New York or Massachusetts. All very dangerous signs to one's moral quality and ability to think wisely. But That's what it produces. This was this condemnation, and with this I'll end. This condemnation of their brother says very little about the brother, and it says a lot about the siblings. Okie dokie, let's go to your questions.
Hi, my name is Mai Hager. I live in Casper, Wyoming, and I was wondering, looking at my generation and how discouraging it can be, how much hope you feel like we can have towards the future.
Whoops, 1 second. Let me see if I can do this. 1 minute. I did it. After blowing it, I got it right. You don't know. They are dazzled. All the guys working here on this video. They're blown away. Do you know what they're blown away by? The fact that I'm impressed with myself for doing it. Maya, M-Y-A. I never heard of that. No. Did you? Mm-hmm. You know a Maya? You have a Maya in your life?
There was a famous rap singer named Maya.
Oh, yeah, the rap singer, of course. Yeah. I can't believe I forgot. Maya, thank you. Casper, Wyoming. Okay, so it's rare that I get a question that I can't really answer well. I should be able, but I can't bluff. My generation, the generation after my generation, have really screwed up a great country and are giving you only burdens. That America may elect the party that will saddle you with a debt that you cannot pay, that may lead to terrible economic suffering, and economic suffering leads always to political horrors. Anti-Semitism was not the primary reason Hitler got elected and the Nazis got elected in the 1932 elections in Germany. It was the economic state of Germany. I mean, anti-Semitism was his primary concern. He hated Jews more than he loved Germany. He hated Jews more than anything else in life. But that's not how he got elected. He got elected on, I'm going to fix Germany, and he didn't even get a majority of the vote, as it happens. These are important things to know. But economic catastrophe almost always leads to political catastrophe. So I do worry for your generation that any member of your generation votes for those who will spend more and more money and give you who's going to have to pay this debt after all, or who's going to receive you. Whenever I speak at universities, or not whenever, but often when I speak at universities, I will open up my talk saying, thank you. On behalf of my generation, I want to thank you for taking our debt. And yet, that's the party that most young people vote for. People don't vote on rational bases. People don't do most things on rational bases. It's true all over the spectrum. It's why the title of my most important work in many ways, my Bible commentary, is The Rational Bible, because I use reason to explain every verse. And I'm a big believer in reason. You need reason and you need God. God without reason leads to fanaticism, and reason without God leads to men give birth to absurdities. So you're being saddled with really bad stuff. When I grew up, kids loved America. 90% of kids loved America. Most families had an American flag out on July 4th and Memorial Day and so on. We were not told in first grade that there are 52 genders. Boys were boys, girls were girls. The staggering increase in the number of boys who say they're girls, and especially girls who say they're boys, is a phenomenon of our time. It is not a phenomenon of natural proclivities of girls to say they're boys. It's exceedingly rare, but now it's far more common. You're inheriting chaos. I know I'm depressing you, by the way. I understand that. But I don't want to depress you. So you ask if there's hope. Of course there's hope. But there's only hope if you fight. That's the bottom line. There is a direct relationship between hope and fighting to make hope real. And that's your decision and that of your entire generation, and of course my generation and younger generation between you and me. If people fight, there's hope. If people don't fight, there's no hope. And what do you fight for? That's where another one of my books, Still the Best Hope, comes into play, where I explain the American value system, the leftist value system, and the Islamic value system. It's 3 books in one. It's called Still the Best Hope. America has a trinity just like Christianity does. It's on every coin. I didn't make it up. E pluribus unum, from many one, liberty, and in God we trust. I think it's the finest plan to make a good society, any society in the world, I might add, that has ever been devised. Okay, Prager United member question. Prager United members get a whole host of benefits. One of them is you get the first question after the video question, and you make it possible. The best benefit you get, in my opinion, is that you've helped make the Fireside chat and other PragerU free content possible. So please go to PragerUnited.com and see what I mean. And now he's snoring. And now let's just take a moment and enjoy Mr. Tubbs snoring. I will admit, my wife and I find his snoring at night so calming. Soothing. It is, I don't need sleeping pills, but if I did, he would serve it. Okay, this is Luminita L, 38 in Bucharest, Romania. So that's really nice. A Romanian member of Prager United, which makes sense because there's nothing I say that is only relevant to Americans. Nothing. Obviously, I use an American context, but either everything I say is relevant to people anywhere or it's not relevant to people anywhere. It's got to be universally relevant. Hi, Dennis. Do you think God gave us life? If so, shouldn't he intervene from time to time so that his plans for and with us happen? And how can I know his will for me if I don't get an answer to my prayers? I am a Christian struggling with knowing God and his will for me. Thank you. Whew. Well, I'm a deep believer in God, which is why you asked the question. It's interesting. It is not my lingo, but it has never been my religious rhetoric. And I know many, many people have this. And I respect it. I'm not trying to undo it, but I don't have it. To the question of what is God's will for me, I have always understood that God's will for me was answered 3,000 years ago, or 2,800 years ago, by Micah the prophet. Oh man, has God not told you all he wants from you? Only that you pursue justice, love righteousness, and walk humbly with your God. So when people say then, what is God's plan for me? I don't understand. You mean in addition to that? why isn't that sufficient? God wants me to lead a good life, live by the 10 commandments, get married, make a family. That's a pretty big agenda. So I've never quite understood, what does it even mean God has a plan for me to... My father was an accountant. My father was an Orthodox Jew, deep believer in God, not only prayed, but literally spoke to God. He told me this every night before he would go to sleep. He was a deep believer, but did he ever, I don't think he once thought it was God's plan for me that I be an accountant. It was God's plan for him that he get married, make a religious home, raise good children, be faithful to his wife, be active in his community, which he did. He was the president of our synagogue for years. He led a campaign for a member of the synagogue who was rendered blind in a traffic accident in New York City, where he grew up. That's God's plan for all of us. I think people, one of the reasons you may be frustrated is because you're not asking a question that may have an answer. I have never once asked, what is God's plan for me, Dennis? God gave me his plans for me, Dennis, and the rest of humanity who want to take God seriously. How I live that plan, whether I become a welder or a bus driver or an airplane pilot or a lawyer, I don't know why that's God's plan and why you should think of it as God's plan. So I hope this isn't a dispiriting answer, because it's not meant to be dispiriting. It's actually meant to sort of lighten your load. You could spend your whole life asking, what is God's plan for me? And maybe that's why you're not getting an answer. Maybe if God could answer, he'd say, what do you think I gave a Bible? If I were God, that's the answer I would give. But I'm not God. But that's the closest that I could get. Is that? I'm going to ask this gang. Does that make sense? What I just said?
Yeah. If you spend your whole life thinking about what he wants from you, you're not going to live your life.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a possible danger. So I hope that helps. Jeremy, 24, Hiram, Utah. Hey, Dennis. Hey, Jeremy. I'm 24 years old and I'm a lifelong listener. That's funny. When you're 24 and you're a lifelong listener. Yeah, I guess you could say that. But listen, if he started, there are a lot of in America at any rate, where I'm on the radio in many parts of the country, parents would put me on the car radio, taking the kid to school. They'd be stuck with me when they were 6. So if you started 6, 18 years is serious. Okay, anyway, I love that. Lifelong listener to your radio show, but also I've listened to a great deal of Dennis and Julie, that wonderful podcast you should all be aware of called Dennis and Julie, and of course the Fireside Chat. I wanted to know your thoughts on something that has troubled me for most of my life. How is a person supposed to be confident without being arrogant? Confidence seems to be a good thing, but I despise arrogance. Any of your thoughts would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, sir, for your hard work, and God bless. Well, you're a thinker, because, by the way, those would be my exact words. And that is, how did you put it? Confidence seems to be a good thing, but I despise arrogance. So, again, I use me because you know me and because I know me. I know me better than I know anybody else, so I know so many details of my own life, like you and everyone knows details of their lives. Here's an example. I hope it doesn't sound arrogant giving the example. That's the irony. But I have worked in radio for 40 years, and radio depends upon salesmen. In America, all radio is private, nearly all. National Public Radio is not I don't think we need it, but that's a separate issue. And that is the reason that so much radio does not have the same values as the dominant media of the left. New York Times, Washington Post, National Public Radio, a public broadcasting service, and so on. Because it's privately financed. And how is it done? By ads. So that unlike radio nearly all over the world, which is government-run radio, there are no ads, which you have no ads because the government pays for it. But the government pays for it means it does what the government wants. It doesn't do what the people want necessarily. So salesmen make the station go. If it weren't for people selling ads for my show, I would have no show. So I've always appreciated what salespeople do. And on maybe 3 occasions, because I've only worked at 2 stations in 40 years, a member of the sales staff would come in. Let's say they now knew me for only a year. They were a new person or something. And they didn't know that others had said this, but they would say, just want to tell you, you're not a prima donna. That's the words that they would use. Which if you know me, it's a joke to think I'm a prima donna. I think it's actually a joke. Prima donna is arrogant, self-important, star. I'm a star. There was never been a nanosecond of my life that I thought I'm a star. It's like a joke to me, the thought. I don't even know what it feels like, let alone feel it. So, but I obviously have confidence. So I hope I'm living what you're writing. If I didn't have confidence, I couldn't do this. So, right? I'm not going to sit in front of a camera for a half hour and just say what I think, Obviously, there's a level of confidence, but that's true for anyone who does anything competently. I pray my airplane pilot has self-confidence. I don't want to fly with a non-confident pilot, right? I'm very happy if my surgeon thinks he's a good surgeon. That's what I want. That's what we all want. We want people to be confident in what they do. Obviously not to delude themselves, but to be confident. So that's a necessity in life to have some confidence. Arrogance and confidence, I would even go so far as to say they're somewhat mutually exclusive. If you really are confident and appreciate that you have an ability, why would you be arrogant? The arrogant probably lack confidence. So they have to carry on as if they're the center of the universe. So they might be mutually exclusive, arrogance and confidence. It's a theory. I don't know it's absolutely correct. I do know this, and it's in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. Moses, we attribute those books to Moses' writing. And there is a verse which is mind-blowing, and Moses was the humblest man on earth. Now, the traditional belief is Moses wrote it. How humble can you be if you're the humblest man on earth? Theoretically, it's possible. Now, my theory is God told him to write it. The fact is, it's there. Humility, if you're genuinely humble, you can know you're genuinely humble. Why wouldn't you? So it's a great question you pose, and it's an important distinction. How's our timing?
We're good.
Do I have a built-in clock now there? Now, that is not arrogance. That I think I have a built-in clock is a fact. Anyway, I gotta say, if you're going to be arrogant about something, that's not high on the list. Sir, you think you're great? Absolutely. I have a built-in clock. It doesn't generally work that way. But I really do. It's obvious. That's amazing. Well, it goes fast, which, by the way, is a very good sign. Because if I thought it went slowly, you would think it went slowly. And that would not be good. So I hope all of this was provocative of thought. That's the key. And that's why I frequently remind you, it's worth watching periodically or listening to previous episodes of the Fireside Chat. Because I think there's something important in all of them. I hope there is. Otherwise, it's not worth doing it. It has to be important to me, or it has, in my mind, it must be important, or it shouldn't be done. See you next week.